Welcome to Dakota Preparedness. This video is going to be about tips for personal survival. In the last few weeks, I've made an extensive review of the television show I Survived. And this video will highlight many of the common patterns of where and how and why people survived. This is an excellent show that is quite well documented. It's narrated by actual survivals of traumatic incidents, everything from knife, gunshot wounds, blunt force trauma, sexual assault, robbery. It is truly amazing that some of these people survived. But there are some lessons we can learn from this. First of all, one of the things that was quite apparent was the pattern of the traditional fight, flight, or freeze. And within freeze, there's a couple subcategories. There's actual freezing, which my observation was a number of teenagers and even younger children and young adults would literally freeze. In their self-testimony, they would say, "My brain was just frozen. I couldn't decide what to do. I was in shock." Now, to a certain degree, this is to be expected. My father fought with the 3rd Infantry Division in World War II. He was in over 300 gunfights. And he said to get proficient, you really had to survive the first 21 gunfights. But he said after that, there's some basic rules you have to follow. You have to stay superbly disciplined, stay to your training. But he says literally even after hundreds of gunfights, there would be a short period of time where you were in shock. It might be sub-second. It might be 1 to 3 seconds. But during that period, you realize the Nazis are shooting at me. They're trying to kill me. Not the unit next to you, not the squad next to you, you personally. And at that point, you had to spring into action per your experience and your training. So it is natural that a person might freeze momentarily, but to be successful, you need to quickly transition out of that. There's two other subcategories within the freeze. One, which was quite successful as a strategy, was to play dead. Now, to do that, most of the victims, when they reached the point where they chose to play dead, they were cut, bleeding from head to toe, gunshot wounds, just all sorts of trauma done to them. But by playing dead, the perpetrator felt they were dead and left the scene, allowing the victim to escape. Another form of freezing, and this is a bit controversial, is that of conforming, just simply following the orders of what the perpetrator was demanding. Now, in virtually all cases, the strategy actually would switch back and forth. Sometimes the victim would fight, sometimes they would do the conformity, but they were always looking for, where's my out? Where can I escape? As one girl described, when she finally saw that gap where she could escape, she says, "I put wings on my feet and fled." So you often see this. As a matter of fact, one of the things I did notice, there are certain professions and people that have some formal training and dealing with critical decision making and making emergency instantaneous decisions. 3 of the victims that stand out one was an emergency room registered nurse, a medical doctor, and a flight instructor. Each of the episodes usually has about 3 different stories. 2 of them will involve some sort of violent crime usually. And 1 out of the 3 will be something like a shipwreck, a plane wreck, lost in the woods, something of a non-criminal nature. The emergency room registered nurse was in the midst of a truly toxic divorce. And she found herself on the 2nd floor of her home, and she looked down the hall, and there was a man with a mask on, dishwashing gloves on, and a claw hammer. And at that point, she realized she was in serious trouble. The registered nurse at this point concluded that this man that had mysteriously appeared into her house was somehow connected to her husband and the divorce proceedings, that he had hired, in effect, a hitman. Well, she chose to fight initially, and it was one heck of a fight. At one point, she actually managed to get the hammer away from him, hit him 4 times. The hammer was dropped. She tried to run and now changing their strategy to a flight, and she would have made it at that point, but he reached out and grabbed her foot as she ran away. Then another tremendous melee occurred. Somehow she got on top. Somehow she got a chokehold on him until she choked him out. She then did take the flight, ran to the next door neighbor, and when the police showed up, they informed her that the hitman was dead. So that's an example where initially it was a fight strategy, switching to escape or flight, back to fight, back to escape. So a harrowing story, and I attribute it to her experience and training to making split decisions. Now, the situation with the medical doctor, he was Sunday morning, he's working or playing on his computer. He turns around in his own home, and there's a meth addict with a double-barreled shotgun pointed at him. But he remained calm. He developed a rapport, if you will. He conformed in that he gave all the money and valuables that they had in the house. The man then kidnapped him and took him to an ATM machine. But eventually he developed enough of a rapport that the man actually turned him loose. And then the flight instructor was truly an example of where he was in his home element. He was flying an airplane from the United States to Hawaii when the engine stopped. But he had superb abilities to know what to do in the right situations. He quickly notified the U.S. Coast Guard, even though they were hundreds of miles from Hawaii. In total darkness and without any instruments, he was able to get the plane to land in the ocean, but right side up, and successfully he and another co-pilot were able to get out of the airplane. And they were in the water for a couple days, but it was through the truly professionalism of the U.S. Coast Guard that they were saved at that point, which he readily acknowledged. So, is there some lessons we can take away from this? I think there are. I think you can develop an ability to quickly make decisions, to anticipate situational awareness. This could be done as simply as watching the television show I Survived. Or there's another show that's somewhat similar called I Shouldn't Be Alive. You can watch these shows, you can maybe self-identify with these poor characters in these terrifying situations. There is a couple good academic approaches where you could develop it. There's 2 good books I would suggest. One is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. It's an excellent book. The other book is called Left of Bang, which is an excellent book on situational awareness and how you can make a quick assessment of the situation. There was also a definite pattern to where these violent incidences occurred or the accidents occurred. And virtually you could say everywhere you can think of. I don't recall there being an incident at a church, but we all know there have been active shooting incidents at a church. But what the FBI statistics for 2022 show is violent crime happens at the home 48% of the time. So here's a situation where normally you would feel comfortable. You feel that you're at home, you feel secure, but almost half of all violent crime happens there. So what are some of the tips that you can do? Well, number 1 is lock your door. and then make sure that's a solid barrier. Have not only a regular doorknob, but also have a bolt lock on that. Use 3-inch nails in applying the door, not 1 inch or 1.5 inch. And then I would also strongly recommend that you have a door jammer, which I'm illustrating here, which we have on all of our doors and will cost about $25 at Amazon. Also, another excellent home defense is to have a two-way mirror put on your windows so you can see out, but they can't see in. Now at night that reverses a little bit, but not too much. But during the daylight, it's a tremendous advantage. Also having surveillance cameras. The cameras we have run 7 by 24. It's recorded to the cloud, if you will, so you can pull back video. And so most violent perpetrators aren't going to want to approach a home that they know they're going to be on video. Also have a driveway alarm so that you can tell when a car is approaching your property, and these can be obtained fairly economically at like Home Depot or Lowe's. The second area where there was a lot of crime, and matter of fact the FBI statistics once again state that 20% of violent crime is on the highway or an alley or a street or a sidewalk. So one of the suggestions I'd have is don't pick up strangers. As a matter of fact, after watching these shows, there's a practice that I've done 3 times. During the last 4 or 5 years, I've picked up hikers. They have their packs, they have the hiking, trekking poles and everything. They're hikers. But after watching some of these I Survive show, it realized to me that one of those people could have easily turned to me and said, I've got a butcher knife here, I've got a gun, and then I'm in trouble. So you won't find me doing that again. A third area where crime happens about 6% of the time is a parking garage or parking lot. You wouldn't think that, but there was a number of traumatic cases there. And it was against all sorts of people. Yes, young women, but there was a case where 2 18-year-old men were abducted. Seemingly the fella wanted their Jeep, but made them drive to an isolated place and then shot both of them in the back of the head in execution style. And the survivor turned his head, and the bullet just streaked down the side of his face, causing a bleeding wound that looked horrible, but it didn't. Was not lethal. And then he elected to play dead, and the perpetrator did leave. He was able to escape. I would simply not allow at this point a stranger into my car, and you certainly don't want to get into their car. Just don't do it. Another thing at a parking lot is if you use Walmart, for example, park up front where it's well lit. The parking lot, I think most of them have video surveillance. When you get out, be aware. When you're in a parking lot, be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of, is there someone approaching you? And if need be, change your course and veer away from them, or walk over where there's other people, or get into the store. But don't let someone get within, I would say, 25 feet of you. Now, another pattern that sort of stood out was the relationships of the people. Now, we usually think for violent crime that the individual is going to be a stranger, and the FBI statistics show that indeed about 43% of the time the person's relationship is unknown, or they're just a straight up stranger. But interesting enough, the violent crime also showed that from the FBI statistics, about 20% are boyfriends, girlfriends, otherwise known, and particularly divorces led to some really, truly dramatic incidences. So you need to be monitoring that. Now, so I think that when you watch these shows as you move throughout life, you have to have, for most of us, it's 99.99% of the time you're safe, but you have to have some self-awareness, the awareness that something could happen, and have a plan of what would you do at that point. Now, you can't live in a paranoid world. You have to be optimistic. You have to enjoy your life. But as one medical doctor once said to me, it's better to stay out of trouble than to get out of trouble. If you found this video helpful, please click like and subscribe. It helps the channel and it helps the community. Be prepared.